Okay, good evening everyone and welcome to this meeting of the Inner West Community Committee. My name is Councillor Hesselwood and I will be chairing today's meeting and obviously I'm deputising for Councillor Bithell, who is currently on adoption leave. So before I begin, could I inform members that the 90-minute rule and social distancing has obviously now been removed, so we don't need to follow those rules now. However, it is good practice that if the room gets to a temperature that makes staff and visitors uncomfortable, then a welfare break may be needed to allow the room to ventilate. So if anyone is feeling uncomfortable or you feel that we need a break, please just indicate and we will arrange that. Okay. So the Inner West Community Committee covers the Armley, Bramley and Stanningley and Kirkstall wards, and is a committee where ward councillors have an opportunity to discuss and make decisions about services and priorities for the local area, and also consider funding applications regarding local community projects and youth activities. So this meeting is being live streamed on the City Council's YouTube channel so that the public can observe the meeting without needing to be present here in the Civic Hall. So could I now invite members and officers to introduce themselves, and once you have introduced yourself, if I can ask you to mute your microphone, because otherwise it will keep picking up for the live feed. Okay, so if I could ask councillors first of all, starting with Councillor McKenna, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jim McKenna, the Armley ward.
Evening, everyone. Councillor Lou Cunningham, Armley ward.
I'm Councillor Fiona Venner. I'm Councillor for Kirkstall ward.
Worked for me. Good evening, Councillor Kevin Ritchie, Bramley and Stanningley ward.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Jane Dowson. I'm here as Deputy Exec Board Member under the Leaders portfolio to present the City Plan item on your agenda.
Hi, I'm Karen McManus from the Communities team.
Debbie Oldham, I'm Clerk to the committee. Andrea Ellison, Chief Librarian, to represent the paper on libraries.
Kate Midwood, Senior Librarian in West Leeds.
Amy Beswick, I'm a Policy Officer in the Chief Executive's office and I'm here to also present on the City Plan.
Sorry, Liz is there, but we don't have the microphone working at the moment, so we'll get that fixed. Thank you, Liz. And the Community Committee also have co-opted members on the Inner West Community Committee from each of the wards. So if I can ask our co-optees that are here to introduce themselves. So Jonathan.
That's it, you're on.
Right, I thought it would be on second, I could leave. My name's Jonathan Butler and I'm from Bramley and Stanley ward.
My name's Stephen Galvani, I'm a co-optee from Kirkstall ward.
My name's Cat Hyde, I'm a potential co-optee for the Armley ward.
Okay, we are considering the report to invite members to consider Catherine's co-optee to the Community Committee, and that will be considered under item 8, which will allow you then to speak on the discussions that we're having this evening. Okay, thank you. sorry, one late item that came in is that Hazel Bootle, who has been a CoOp Team to this committee for many years, yesterday emailed to say that she would be standing down as a CoOp Team, which is very sad news, as Hazel has been a stalwart of this committee from Armley, and has done some fantastic work and certainly informed members in decision making and given her opinions to us and helped us make those decisions over the years. So that's very sad news that Hazel has said that she will be standing down as a CoOp Team. That only came in yesterday. So I just wondered if Jim and Lou, sorry, I want to say Alice then, I'm so sorry. I just have apologies in my head, sorry. If Jim and Lou would like to just say a thank you to Hazel.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. Yes, she's been absolutely brilliant on it. As you can see, we only have, when we agree Kat, and I'm sure we will, a nomination, we only have one member from Armley, which we should have more. But over the years, we've struggled to get members. And all that time, probably in the last 10, maybe 12, going back to the area committee, Hazel has been there and filled in. And indeed, her partner, David, who is in his 80s, has driven her around. She'd have never been able to access these meetings had it not been for David. I've sent her an email thanking her for all the hard work she's done. And I've also paid tribute to David for the role he's had in it. She'll be sadly missed. I'm not sure how she's going on, because she's also chair of Army Helping Hands, and maybe Lou knows something about that as a trustee. And she's also very much involved in Armley Common Rights Trust, as in David, as is her partner, David. She'll be missed, but I don't think she's gone away. She just likes being involved in herself in the life of the community, and I look forward to her perhaps playing a less intensive role in the years ahead. But I'm sure she'll find a way to continue serving our community. It'd be nice, Karen, if we send a letter to her thanking her from the community committee for all the hard work she's done. Thank you, Chair.
Lou, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Hazel, I hope you're watching. I've got a feeling that you may well be tuning in tonight. I just want to say a huge thank you for your input and insight into the Inner West Community Committee. Hazel is a force of good in Armley as a whole and has been for many years, and she's always got very wise and insightful comments to make, and we'll really greatly miss you, but you won't be able to avoid seeing us, I'm afraid, Hazel, because as Councillor McKenna said, Hazel is chair of Armley Helping Hands and active with the Armley Common Rights Trust, and also is still arranging things like litter picks and other community events. So look forward to seeing you soon, Hazel, and thank you for everything.
Thank you both. And if we can arrange a letter to go to Hazel, thanking her for her many years of service on the community committee, that would be great. Thank you, Karen. Brilliant. Okay, so moving on to the agenda now. We're going to take items 1 to 5 first of all. So Debbie, if I can ask you to run through items 1 to 5, please.
Thank you, Chair. Under agenda item 1, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Agenda item 2, there are no items which require the exclusion of the press or the public. Agenda item 3, there are no late items of business. However, there has been some supplementary information in relation to the finance report, which has been circulated to all members, and you should all have a paper copy as well in front of you. Under agenda item 4, could I ask members to declare any interests? I'll take that as none. And agenda item 5, apologies for absence have been received from councillors Alice Smart, John Illingworth, Hannah Bithell and Councillor Gruen, and also CoOp Team for Bramley, Steve McBarron. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So agenda item 6 is the minutes from the last meeting that were held here in the Civic Hall on the 20th of July, which are in your pack. So do members accept that those minutes are a true and correct record of the last meeting from the 20th of July? I'll accept your nods and as acceptance of those minutes. Thank you very much. And are there any matters arising from those minutes? No? Okay, that's great. Thank you, everybody. Item 7 is the open forum, and in line with current guidelines, we'd normally read out any written submissions as we had at the last meeting, but we haven't received any written submissions, and I can't see that we have anybody in the room, members of the public. Oh, sorry. Apologies, the pillar's right in my eye line, sorry. No, okay, thank you. Sorry, the pillar's blocking my view. I do apologise. So we have no items under the open forum. Okay. So item 8 then is the report requesting members' consideration on the nomination for Catherine to be our Armley co-optee. And Debbie, if I could ask you to present the report, please.
You can. Thank you very much, Chair. This is the report from the City Solicitor, under which we are, this community committee actually has a number of co-optees, and we would like to ask councillors to consider the nomination of Catherine Hyde as a co-optee for the Armley ward.
Okay, so Jim has, Councillor McKenna, sorry, has seconded that. So are all members in agreement that Catherine is our Armley co-optee? Yep, brilliant, thank you. And welcome to the committee meeting, Catherine, officially. Well, we are allowed, we do have 3 from each ward. So hopefully, Hazel informed us yesterday that she stepped down. Hopefully we will get another co-optee to replace her. But I'm sure that Lou and Jim will speak to you about co-optees in Armley and how we can approach that. Thank you. But you are allowed to, now that's passed, you are allowed to obviously speak in the discussions that we're going to have tonight as well. So please feel free to make any points that you want to in the discussions following. Okay, so we'll move on then to agenda item 9, which is the city plan engagement. So if I can ask Councillor Dowson and Amy to present your report. I know you have some slides to present to us, so very much looking forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I know I'm looping all Amy's best lines, so I'll try not to do that tonight. But
sorry, before you start, Councillor Dowson, sorry, can I just ask members to any comments and questions we'll take after the presentation? Is that okay? So if you've got anything that you want to ask or any comments, if you just make a note, and we'll come to that after the presentation.
And actually that's why we're here. We're here to hear from you. So that's the important part of the meeting. So I'll try and whiz through my bits that I just wanted to say to you, because I know at least one person around this room, and potentially 2 if you include me, will remember the last Best Council Plan and potentially the vision for Leeds. The Best Council Plan is now a decade old, and a lot's happened in that decade that couldn't have been foreseen when we actually wrote that plan. I mean, we've had Brexit, who'd have known? We've had devolution. The climate emergency was just a thought on somebody's mind 10 years ago. Now it's preeminent in everything we do in the council. And obviously recently we've had COVID-19, which has changed the way we all think and the way we all do things across not only the city, but the country and the world. So lots of things have happened over that 10 years. So now is the right time, we feel, to refresh that plan and to look again at it. We've got around 800,000 people live in Leeds. Yorkshire and Humber has the same population as the whole of Scotland. And that is important because as part of the LEP as part of Yorkshire and Humberside, we are one of the biggest economic drivers. You'll know a lot of this, second largest city outside London, one of the largest student populations, we're the second largest financial centre in the whole of the country. And with the arrival of Channel 4 and before, we were one of the main areas for digital as well. So we're doing quite well on a lot of fronts. We're a young city, and we obviously have the strap lines at the moment: best city to grow up in and best city to grow old in. We looked at this, there's 76 strategies in Leeds. That's an awful lot of strategies, but they all are important. And to the people who wrote them, for the niche market that they're looking at, it is really important that we have those, but we need to actually look at bringing all those together. And we're not just doing that ad hoc, we're actually using a lot of the meetings that are taking place across the city. We've already attended Voluntary Action Leeds, we've attended a lot of community committees, we're attending the hub meetings. I think we're going to the Youth Council as well. So we are trying our best to include everybody. We've added to that list through going to community committees. We're going to talk to the town and parish councils as well. So do think in your own areas, are there any groups of people we might have missed? Let us know, because we're quite prepared to go out and talk to as many people as possible. You know, we're talking to the Chamber of Commerce and so on. So we are trying to be very inclusive in who we talk to. It's a really important piece of work going forward. And I mean, we are a great city. We know we are. We've got lots of really good things going for us. We're the economic powerhouse. The stat I like is that Leeds' economy is 108% larger than that of Sheffield. And it's 177% larger than Bradford's. It's good in one way, but it's quite sad in another way, because Leeds is that economic driver. What happens in Leeds does actually affect lots of other areas across the north of England, and we do need to bear that in mind as that economic driver. Got really low unemployment rates. We've got a good social infrastructure. Our third sector, I think, especially during the time of COVID, have really come to the forefront as being fantastic organisations that can really help the council and the citizens of Leeds, because going forward, not only can't we do it all ourselves because of the budgetary constraints and the money we've had removed from central government, but also we shouldn't do it all ourselves. These organisations and the citizens of Leeds have proved that actually they're just as able to step up and do a lot of this work. But let's not think we're absolutely fantastic, because we've got tons of challenges. And I think we heard at council yesterday, 24% of our children under 16 live in relative poverty. And I hate percentages because it doesn't mean a lot, but actually that's 36,000 children across Leeds that live in relative poverty. We've always had a significant challenge to improve attainment, and we don't seem to be able to knock that on the head at all. And I'm saying we because let's be honest about this. You know, education now is in the hands of academies. So the we includes academy chains and the council working with all bodies to try and do that. Climate change, one of our main pillars, we need to crack that on the head. But I suppose the main thing is, and it is in the statistics you're going to see, one thing that does highlight this beyond anything else is the age that people die. If you live in a better off area of Leeds, if you're a woman, there's an 11-year age gap. If you're a man, it's 15 years. That's a huge gap between the better off areas and the more deprived areas. So we're not resting on our laurels, but the main thing is you can look at all the statistics you want in the world and it doesn't tell you the stories, because your local ward councillors, you talk to your residents all the time, you know what's going on in your area. So what we're really looking from you is what lies underneath those statistics. You know, what can be done. It's you pick that out, you know, low attainment, but what is causing that? It might not be anything to do with schools. It could be poor housing. It could be lack of digital inclusion. So we're trying to get underneath the statistics for you to tell us what's happening in your area and what we can do to actually improve things, and things we can include in the plan that will actually make a real difference going forward. And I've taken all Amy's best lines yet again, so she'll whiz through the slides, and then Chair, if we can just listen to you telling us what it's like in your areas.
Thanks, Councillor Dowson. I'm just having some slight issues with the slides, so I'm really sorry about that, but we'll see if we can get them back up again. But I'll just talk you through some of the main points, and then as Councillor Dowson said, we can go straight into the discussion really. But in terms of what the plan is actually going to look like, it's going to be high level. It's going to be setting out the ambitions that we have. We're not going to be reinventing the wheel, as Councillor Dowson said, so we'll be, using the things that we have already and trying to articulate that in a way that's clear for people and that signposts to other more detailed plans. So at the moment, we think that the what we have been calling the 3 pillars of inclusive growth, health and wellbeing and climate change are likely to remain an important feature of this plan. And really it's about where we can position this plan at the centre of all of those agendas, because they're obviously overlapping. And if I could show you the slides right now, we've got a Venn diagram which kind of demonstrates how each of those 3 big agendas are very mutually beneficial. I'll just talk a little bit about some of the research that will inform the city plan. So we did the joint strategic assessment earlier this year, just being finalised at the moment. That gives us a lot of data and information about where we're at as a city currently, and also where we're going to be over the next decade or so. We also did a learning lessons exercise coming out of COVID, looking at the way that the multi-agency arrangements works and how organisations have worked together. So there's been a lot of partnership working that has been really, really strengthened during the pandemic, and I'm sure you'll all have seen that. So it's about how we can build on that going forward. But some key principles that we think are likely to feature will be things like, or that we can look into, potentially using in the plan, will be things like the idea of the Leeds pound, which is this idea of keeping money within the local economy, but also making best use of our resources, making sure that we're investing in the skills of local people with money that's spent, and certainly the principles around being asset-based and strengths-based, so using the strengths that we have in our communities and the fantastic social infrastructure we've already got there. So trying to sort of articulate that and how we're going to work to sort of solve problems for the decade ahead. Just cover a little bit around time frame. So we are doing this we've got a fairly shortish time frame. Final plan will be ready by February next year. So as Councillor Dowson said, we're sort of in the middle of that engagement at the moment and looking to have something starting to come onto a page around the time of State of the City in December. And I'll leave it there for now and just go to the questions. And I'm happy to repeat these, but you should have them in your report pack as well. No,
they're not. I've had a look myself.
Okay.
These are just what we think. So if you just read them all
They're
out.
just a starter for getting people thinking. I'm sure you'll have plenty to contribute. But the questions were, what are the big issues for Leeds now and over the next 10 years? And in particular, the issues for the Inner West area now and again over the next 10 years. How can local communities play their parts in achieving what we want to achieve? And then finally, there was a question that, I'm happy whether we discuss this or not, but we were interested in getting people's views on the best city ambition, which we've had for a while, but there's sort of mixed views about whether we want to keep that as an ambition or not. How important is that, and does that give the right message? So if anybody has any particular thoughts on that, we'd also welcome to hear those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Dowson and Amy. Thanks for that. And if anyone wants those questions repeating, we'll ask Amy to do that as we're going through the discussion. So would anyone like to start? Okay, I've got Councillor McKenna and then Councillor Venner.
Thanks, Amy. I probably will come in with a proper question in a while, but when you introduced it, you talked about 3 pillars and you mentioned health and well-being and climate change. That's 2, or have I missed one, or are you considering health one and well-being the other? But I'd have thought they belong together anyway.
Sorry, no, the third one was inclusive growth. I'm sorry if I didn't say that, but yeah, inclusive growth, health and well-being and the climate emergency.
Councillor Venner.
This is more of a comment, really. There's a joint strategic needs assessment taking place at the moment. We're getting a presentation on it at Health and Wellbeing Board tomorrow morning, which I chair. And it feels like that's really important to provide the evidence base for the plan. And it feels really timely that we were due to do the strategic needs assessment anyway, and we're coming out of COVID, or well, we're at a different point in COVID to where we were. And it feels that's I think it's almost a bit difficult to, although we could say we would keep those principles of the 3 pillars, actually we really need the evidence of the strategic needs assessment to determine what the priorities are for the city, because that's a really solid evidence base for identifying where we need to direct resource and energy and time, because it will demonstrate where the greatest need is in the city. And some of that we know, but it provides the evidence base.
I think Councillor Venn, I think you've actually got a good point. This will all be drawn together at the State of the City meeting, and we'll be fleshing it out then. So it isn't a report that's going to be written next week, and we don't want this to be the end of the conversation, but the beginning of the conversation. So our doors are open for you to actually talk to us at any point. But Nigel Richardson used to say, everything comes from everywhere else. Which was my whole point. You know, if we've got the big health inequalities, what's lying underneath that? And Jim will know in Armley you had the asbestos issue at one point, which informed the death rate in Armley at one point. So it doesn't have to be directly linked, but you know where those links are, and we don't, to all sorts of things in your own ward, which you can eventually link through the JSA. But statistics are great things. It's how you use them, and using them to the benefit of your residents. But as you've said, you will know the stories that are going on already, the things that you think and what's happening in your area. So we can start thinking underneath the statistics that we've already started to pull together. And lots of other consultations going on at the moment. We've got talent and skills, we've got the local plan. I think there's another health survey coming out quite soon as well. So there's lots of research and work going on underneath it all, but it doesn't tell us everything. You're the key link for me to this as local representatives.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham, and then I'll come back to Councillor McKenna. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Amy. So going on to a few questions and points. I think for Armley, for me, in the big issues side of things, a lot of it comes down to housing, but within housing, I want to say more having a home, because I think we may well be able to allocate people to buildings, but that's not what makes somewhere a home for someone. So some of our families may well have a roof over their head, but they may not have carpets on the floor. They may not have cooking facilities. And these are the things that I know have huge impacts on families and on children's growing up. Within that, also around skill sets, around that kind of homemaking, budgeting, cooking, cooking on a budget, all those things impact health, they impact well-being, they impact people's everyday lives. And so I think that for the residents of Armley, having a best city ambition isn't really relevant. For them, having a best area and a best place to grow up, a best place for their children to grow up, and that includes adequate provision of green space and activities that are accessible for people. And I think in terms of local communities playing a part, I think, again, that's our responsibility to make sure that people feel that they're listened to and have a voice, because I think people go round in circles in many of our services. I've been there myself. You know, if you've got antisocial behaviour going on around you, you're trying to make reports, you're just going round in circles, having to fill in forms and not really seeing any positive outcomes. And I think the more that we hear the people, then the more engagement we'll have, and the more of our community assets will come to light and have real, true fruition. So yeah, and in terms of the Leeds pound, just speaking on a general point and asking a general question, It is something that I've spoken about in other scrutinies before. One of the points about the Leeds pound is I'd like to know thoughts on the investments when they go back into big chains rather than back into our local communities. And so in that way, a Leeds pound doesn't really help our local economies. Thank you.
So I'm going to bring Councillor McKenna in, but just on Councillor Cunningham's first point about housing, I agree with everything that you've said, absolutely. And another problem is that we have families who are having to move every year because they're in private rented accommodation, and because of the rules around that, the landlord, you will only have a year's contract. Then we have families who are having to constantly move as well, and that adds to that sense of not having a home. You may have a roof over your head, but it's not a home because you're constantly on the move, aren't you? And we've got families in that position that are constantly moving around. Yeah. Councillor McKenna.
Oh, thanks, Chair. And yes, I totally agree with Lou that housing is a huge issue in their area. To me, health is a really big issue as well. The outcomes in Army are poor. Going back to the statistics that Jane quoted, when I was on the Health Authority representing Army in West Leeds about 20 years ago, we used to have a saying, and it was based on statistics, that the boy born today in New Wortley would live 12 years less than the boy born in 4 miles up the road in Pudsey. And it seems to me, Jane, from what you've said, that gap has grown now. It's 15 years for male lifespan. The local community had a solution for it. They said, well, you know what we should do? We should move to Pudsey, but given the housing problem, it's not quite that easy. I think that's a real issue. And I think you can look at some of our communities and you can see lifestyles reflect people's low esteem of themselves and the community. I think that's really something we should home in on the plan. Education is another one in Army. I have to say that children don't do that well in education in Army compared to citywide achievement levels. Dixon Unity are improving a bit, but I think it'll be 5 or 6 years before that starts to show. Education determines a child's lifestyle, how they're going to live. Are they going to escape the chains of poverty, or are they going to be locked in it like the parents was? So that's another one that we should think about. And transport is a problem in West Leeds. You get people from New Wortley, young people, teenagers looking for a job, and you recommend jobs to them, and they think that Leeds City is the end of the earth. They're not used to going there. They don't travel so easy on transport. So I guess what I'm saying is that we probably need more local jobs. And then the old chestnut that we get all the time is the lack of green spaces and sports fields in Army. We're very, very, very much under share of that, very low. So these are issues that I would like to see, and I would like to see efforts made to make Army Town Centre more prosperous than there is. We're starting to see steel grids going up and shops closing and not much coming in. It may be a reflection on the pandemic and business going bust, but I'd like to think somewhere along the line we can use the Tories mantra of building back better, because local jobs are hugely important. And the other thing, just a very quick one, we have a lot of elderly homes, social thing. My own mother-in-law is in a care home in Army, and we know what happened and how badly they were neglected. But because property prices are cheap in Army, they tend to build a lot of care homes in Army. So that's an issue I think we should keep on, and I'll leave it there for the moment. And thanks for the opportunity, Chair, to let me do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. The first question I was going to ask was, are we dropping the best council ambition? Because some people might see that as us sort of quietly dropping that and then lacking ambition. But I agree with Councillor Cunningham there, what did it actually mean? I mean, we all say Leeds is the best city, of course it is. We think we're the best football team as well. Well, the Liverpool fans might beg to differ from this weekend, but it's really hard, isn't it, to really measure how we are the best city. So I can understand us dropping that, but I think people might start to question why are we doing that and are we lacking ambition? In terms of some of the presentation, so those big impressive numbers that were the second largest economy, the economic growth, this, that and the other, it sounds really great, doesn't it? But actually, what does it mean to people in our communities? They're not benefiting from that. We know that. Councillor McKenna talked about 20 years ago, and we've moved on, and we're not really narrowing that gap, are we? And it's not the council's fault, but we've got to accept that. And that's what people in our communities, I think, feel about that. When I first became a councillor in 2014, we had a very ambitious housing growth programme across the city, both private and council, mainly private, of course, and also the economic growth. And I remember sitting in meetings where that was going to fill the gap from the government cuts, which have continued throughout that period and started before then. But that didn't happen. Despite Trinity opening, John Lewis opening, we flatlined on business rate growth. And again, the housing rate growth is not ever going to, you're never going to fill the gap through council tax, because council tax doesn't cover all our costs. It's up to about 60% now. So you're not going to build your way out, into prosperity either. One of the issues with business rates, of course, is all the appeals that cost us. So the way local government's finances has a massive impact and restricts us on doing what we need to do. So what do people in Bramley and Stanley, I'm sure other areas in the inner west feel? Well, what they're telling me, people on the estates, is they feel neglected. A lot of our estates were built about 50 years ago. I'm thinking the Snowdons, the Broadleys in Bramley, and I'm sure there are others in the other wards. And it just feels like the infrastructure's there. It's just tired, the pathways, uneven, missing flags, this, that, and the other. And it just needs a lot of investment. People see the city centre getting the investment and they say, why the city centre and why not us? That's a big challenge for us. Green space has been mentioned again. We've had this strategy on parks. We've got a new one that's been relaunched because we're an ambition to raise all parks to the green flag standard, which we didn't meet. And so it's been refreshed and changed slightly. But the fundamental problem is how resources are allocated across the city. And it's for parks infrastructure, it's through planning gain. So where there's the development, you get the money to invest in your local green space infrastructure. A lot of the development we know is happening in the Pudseys, the Horsforths, the Morleys. The councillors there object like holy hell, as we know, when we're planning chairs or ex-planning chairs. And yet, of course, they get the benefit of that green infrastructure. We've moved to SIL now, but we're having to use SIL to fill the gap again from lack of government funding. We're building for schools and this, that, and the other. So where we could distribute that across the city for green spaces, improving our estates, we can't do that. So in summary, I believe that people feel neglected in the wards. I don't think that's the council's fault. It's the way that local governments just financed inadequately, has been for years and continues to be. And we're juggling pots. Can we do anything differently around that planning gain? Of course, the people in those areas would say, you're building in our areas, so we want the benefits, kind of thing. But so that's it from me. And it may be hard. It's hard for me to hear it, but that's what people tell me on the streets when I'm out and about with the dog, on the Snowdons, on the Broadleys, on the Fairfields, and everywhere else that I go.
Okay, Councillor Venner.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to some of what's been said, actually, particularly from Councillors Cunningham and Ritchie, that I think that's a really good point about what people think of as the city. And I was thinking about it particularly in terms of child-friendly Leeds, which is obviously a big city strategy that's in my portfolio. My previous deputy, Salm Arif, who's now on the cabinet, is the councillor for Hare Hills, which is the most deprived ward in the city with the most children. It's got the highest birth rate. And she was always really keen that child-friendly Leeds had to move out of the city because her residents don't come into the city. So she introduced things like play streets in Hare Hills. And then this summer, when we had the fantastic dinosaurs, we had a scheme of paying for buses, so that people could come into the city. So I think that's a really well-made point, that actually when we have city plans, we need to think about what they mean for each locality, because the poorest people don't come out of their immediate areas. And also from a children's point of view, the birth rate is growing the fastest in the most deprived wards. So for me, that would always be where the kind of energy needs to be, really. I chair the Child Poverty Impact Board, which is obviously one of the, when you're describing how many strategies there are, that would be one of them, thriving our child poverty strategy. And we've got a new strand of work within that. We've had 6 work streams for a long time, and we've just got a 7th as a direct result of COVID, which is about access to green space. It's got its own kind of discrete piece of work happening, because it was so magnified during COVID about families who had access to a garden as opposed to families who didn't, like the 7 high rises in my wards, more in Armley, and they've all got children in, and there's no doubt that was a harder existence than people who'd got a garden and access to green space. But I think it needs to be green space in localities, so that people can get to green space easily. So for me, that's a priority that feels like it's become really magnified over COVID. It's become magnified massively as an inequality about children's access to green space. And it was there anyway, like many of these inequalities, but they got very highlighted by the last 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benner. Catherine.
Totally agree on the green space. And just to add, the digital access that's come up quite a bit in Armley at the moment, in a group that I'm with, the Friends of Armley Park. I think in general, when you're talking about putting out lots of surveys and different things, if you haven't got access to a computer or a phone or the internet, it's very hard for people. People feel alienated and don't feel like they've got to say, you know, in our park, there's not enough notice boards to go up, you know, half of them are burnt down. There's not, unless you're online and connected, I think it's very hard for people in the more deprived communities to feel connected and to feel part of surveys and the solution. I think it's virtually impossible. So I think that needs to be sort of considered within all these chats and surveys and conversations that people have, because you're always going to get the voices of the people who are connected and who've probably got their opinions anyway, and it's not those people you really need, is it? It's the people in the estates, I suppose. Yeah.
Thank you. If I could just follow up on Catherine's point. I know a few years ago on Scrutiny Board, we were looking at digital access, and obviously, you know, people being excluded if they weren't online, but the difference that makes to their finances, for example, because if you're online, you get the better deals, don't you, for all sorts of fuel, you know, all sorts of things. Your insurance is everything. If you're doing it, you know, manually, if you like, then you don't get the deals that you do online. So if you're not connected, if you're not online, then it's having that impact on the poorest in our society, because they're getting hit again by not having that access as well. And that's still an issue that's out, you know, that we've got in the city, that we haven't got the people who need to be connected and need to be able to access that that provision. They haven't. And if I could just follow up on Councillor Richard's point about the funding and how we allocate funding in the city, it is, we don't allocate it on an equal basis, because I think in the inner, where the inner west, and I think in our wards, we end up spending our funding on youth activities and activities like that because of the funding cuts from government to youth provision, where we're trying to plug those gaps with the funding we've got, whereas in more affluent wards, in the outer committees, they haven't got those same issues, and they can spend their funding on those improvements and and the things that we're talking about. So there is that inequality, but we're all still getting the same level of funding. So there is the argument to say, well, some of the more deprived communities' funding should be increased, because we need that funding to be able to level up. Is I don't want to use the government's phrase that going around everywhere, but just within the city that needs doing. Within our own city we need to look at that. So I think that's something that we need to look at, because we're having to spend the funding on other issues, and we can't look at those improvements as a result. Would anyone else like to come in?
In which case I'll just finish off, Chair, to thank everybody for their comments. We've been to, I don't know, about 5 or 6 different community committees so far, and it's very interesting. Some of the themes are coming through quite strongly, and they're the same, whether you're in an inner city or an outer city area. And some are totally left of centre, they're totally different to anything else, because each area has its own individual points. And I know as elected members, and I know you represent it's about 16,000 people, isn't it? You know that it isn't just the people who talk loudest, it's the people who don't talk at all or don't have access, and that's the people you're here to represent, and you do it really well. So some of the points you made are absolutely excellent. And going back to Nigel Richardson, the question he always used to ask is, what are you doing? How much of it are you doing, and is it making any difference at all? And I think we need to actually look at what we're doing, because there might just be 1 or 2 things that if we do better, if we do well, it will actually have a knock on to attainment at school, to jobs and skills, to the economy, and so on. And that's the picture we need to do. I know the next presentation is on the library service, and I know a lot will be said about literacy, because that is key to an awful lot, especially when you're looking at job skills and attainment. So I've heard this presentation on all those 6 occasions, because it is doing the rounds with our presentation, but again, equally as important. But the one thing we want to tell you is this is not a tick box exercise for us. I know even in our community we sort of roll our eyes sometimes when people come, because we know that it's a statutory thing you've got to do. This isn't a statutory thing we've got to do. This is something we've chosen to do because we want to hear your voices. So please don't think this is the end. Just email us anything that comes to mind. If you've got a bit of casework and you think, we need to sort this out, let us know, and we can actually then put it to the State of the City meeting. And hopefully by the time we come to the actual report, which will be around February next year, we'll actually have the voices of everybody, and that's all about the voices of everybody who lives in Leeds, if not directly, through you. So thank you very much for everything you've said and for having us here.
Yeah, sorry, I've just got Councillor Ritchie would like to come in, and Councillor McKenna. Yeah. Thank you.
Just one question. Will there be a paper produced on it? Because this is the first I've heard of it, and obviously we had very little in the pack, so it'd be interesting to have a draft, or well, not a draft, but the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, there is going to be a paper going to next executive board in October, and then as we've said, State of the City will have a strong focus around this. So the aim is to have something in draft format that can be discussed at State of the City.
Councillor McKenna, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very small point, Jane. The 16,000 you mentioned are just the people on the electoral register. There's many, many more than that in Armley. There's about 25, 26,000. Plus we get a lot of transient people that come and stay for a while. For instance, one of the areas where we gain population is when they're released from Armley Jail, they stay in the vicinity before moving on. But it's much bigger than that. And then, of course, there's the children who's not in that figure. So we want to look after everybody, don't we? So 16,000 is a hugely underestimated the numbers involved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody, and thank you to Amy and Councillor Dowson for coming and presenting, and also taking on board our comments and thoughts on this. Will you be coming back to Community Committee to report present that paper, or will it be done through full council or something?
It will be at the State of the City meeting first, but obviously if you want us to come back when we get something a bit tighter than just listening, then obviously we can come back at your behest at any point. Well, I don't know about Amy, but
Okay, brilliant. We'll bear that in mind, and if members want that, that more focused detail on the Inner West, then we can do that. Yeah.
if I could just say, Chair, we partway through my presentation, I did say that we're happy to go to other groups. So if you have a forum or something in your area that you'd like us to come and just talk to or talk with, I don't like talking to talk with them, then we're quite happy to do that as well, so long as we've got the diary free.
Okay, thank you very much. Round of applause. You're very welcome to stay for the next item, but I completely understand if you've had a long day and you want to go. Okay, feel free to vacate the meeting. No problem at all. Okay, so we will now go on to item 10, which is our library service update. So Andrea, I think you're going first with this.
Yeah,
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So as it's stated, ostensibly the purpose of this report is to update the committee on the activity of the library service and what we've been engaged in particularly during the last 18 months or so of the pandemic. And then to update on the key priorities of what we're calling our service recovery strategy as we're getting into our next phase. But equally important, I'd like to see this as a start of a much more regular dialogue and conversation about the development and the delivery of the library service in your area. And as Councillor Dowson said about the plan, it's really a chance to talk with you and listen to you about your views on the library service, the local library service. It kind of is quite high level at the moment because, as I say, we've been offering a digital service. We're now back into thinking about how do we reset and restart our library service face to face. So it's sort of outline at the moment, but what I'd propose is that I come back in around springtime just to give you a bit more detail on what's happening locally in your area around those priority areas. And then very much more on an annual basis to come with a lot more detail about level of activity in your local libraries and take up of that in particular. So how many members have we got within any particular age range? How many schools are we engaging with? So you can get a real understanding of that local flavour. So I don't have a presentation to give tonight, just to, you've had the report, just to highlight it is in two halves. The first section provides very much an overview of our work during COVID, when we delivered mainly a digital programme, which I accept wasn't available for everybody from comments earlier. We invested in our digital resources, so and we had a sort of fairly significant increase in take up of our digital resources. So our ebooks really took off, as they did up and down the country in library services. And some of that growth has really been maintained. But we also bought new digital resources as well. So we now you not only able to access ebooks and e-magazines, but also e-newspapers. So, it's a service that we offer a lot of things, and it's really hard to get the message across about the breadth and depth of the provision. But when you are in areas of where poverty is a real issue, that's a free service: free newspapers, free magazines, free books, obviously. We've also invested in new digital platforms. So we've got something called Niche Academy, and that's for people who have got access to digital. It supports them with developing their digital skills. So there's lots of how-to guides and videos and tutorials on there, anything from how to keep in touch via Zoom to how to download some of our e-resources. So I've said that the period saw a significant increase in the use of many of our digital resources. And we also delivered a really innovative programme of online activities for children that included code clubs and Lego clubs. And Kate was one of the librarians who was really instrumental in setting those up and delivering those. And something else we did, which wasn't digital, which was really innovative, and we took the lead there from one of our neighbouring authorities. It was actually Kirklees that set something up that took off across the country with libraries, as we initiated a programme of keep in touch calls, mainly with our elderly residents. So we made over 9,000 telephone calls just to update people about what was happening with the library service, to reassure them that they didn't need to return their overdue library books, because a lot of people were actually worried about that. We were in a pandemic, but people were worried about what to do with their library books. But it gave us an opportunity to check out how people were, if they had devices, to make sure that they knew how to download ebooks, for example. A lot of people had the devices, older people, they'd been set up by a relative, and they didn't really understand how to do anything much with it apart from what was there. So our library staff were able to support them in that. We made referrals to the COVID helpline. And so we would had some requests to make those phone calls quite regular as well. We had really good feedback about how people found them really valuable and helped to keep them in touch. And I think there was something there about it, a phone call coming from the local library service rather than a COVID helpline. It felt quite familiar and friendly. So we'll be continuing with the development and delivery of the digital offer. There's no doubt we learnt a lot, and yeah, there's a lot of good practice that we will continue to deliver. But getting back to face is a priority, and we've identified our key sort of areas as part of our recovery strategy. And I think this does follow on really nicely from the presentation on the city plan. So our priorities as library service are our programmes of support around economic recovery, children and young people that's been mentioned, health and well-being, digital inclusion and learning, absolutely pivotal to what we do, and of course our books, reading and culture agenda. So the report sort of gives you a highlight of some of the outcomes we hope to achieve through those programmes of activity. But just to give you a flavour of what those programmes would mean, you know, one of the big projects we've got in Leeds libraries at the moment is we're part of the British Library's BIPC service. That's a business and intellectual property service. We provide an incredible range of support, from resources to help businesses grow and develop. But our real strength in this area is around startups, and we do particularly well with engagement with young people, with women and people from different communities. And we like to think that's something to do with the USP of a library, that it's warm and welcoming and friendly and non-stigmatized. It's a different feeling if you go to somewhere like Platform, isn't it? It feels quite sort of like techie, but you know, you can actually pop down to the Central Library to get some help to start your business up or to patent your idea. And we've now got funding through the DCMS to expand that service, to support the development of that service in our neighbouring West Yorkshire authorities. But crucially, we're going to be through Adventure and funding through ERDF funding. We're going to be delivering that on the high street through our local libraries as well. So people will no longer have to come into the Central Library to get support. They can get that business support through the local library. And it's really, you know, I mean, gosh, if somebody comes with the latest Google idea, that's great, we'll help them. But we're not really high growth. We're really about supporting people who are crafting and making in their own homes, and just sort of suggesting to them, have you ever thought about doing this as a business? And we've got some incredible success stories of businesses we've supported. Councillor Dowson mentioned about literacy. Children and young people are absolutely key to our service provision. It's a particular passion of mine, and Kate's, I think, as well, because Kate was formerly a teacher. I was formerly a children's librarian. We've just had a really busy summer with the Summer Reading Challenge, and also providing cultural activities as part of the Holiday Activity Fund. The focus from us this term is very much to be really getting on track with our early years offer, that early literacy. So re-establishing our story sessions in libraries for the children sort of around 18 months. But pivotal to our early years offer is going to be our really gorgeous story buses that we're going to have out on the road. And that, you know, I'm hoping that they will go across the city, but they will have a particular focus in areas where we know there is children are struggling with their early literacy. And it's really about providing a beautiful environment, and they are absolutely gorgeous. And we don't have just one, we have 2 of these buses. We took delivery of them just before lockdown. They're covered in Nick Sharratt illustrations, and they're just lovely, beautiful spaces. And there we want to share books and stories with children and family, but also crucially model how to share those stories for the parents, because sometimes people feel quite nervous about doing that, even storytelling with their own children. So hoping that is going to be an amazing service. And we're also planning that they will have more of a regular attendance at festivals as well as exhibition vehicles. And I think for us, it is really, really important, that early literacy. And I think we talked about poverty. And if we really want to keep our children in Leeds and in all our areas out of long-term poverty in the criminal justice system, we need to make sure that they can read. And we know that in the prison population, among the prison population, many who are in prison have very low levels of literacy. So it's really key. Health and well-being, again, something that's very much at the centre of what we do. We provide safe, welcoming spaces, spaces that people can just come into. You know, if you're at home with children, sometimes it's just about getting out. It's a free space you can go to, share some stories, pick up some information or a book yourself. Again, for older people, particularly for carers, again, it's a place to go where you don't have to spend any money. You can just come and be with other people. But of course, we also have events and activities as well. But as well as the spaces, we run programs. We have resources. So we have our books on prescription to support self-help. And we're also looking at programs of activity to support engagement and look to reduce isolation. I could talk about so many things. I'm going to have to stop. But we've got our Reading Friends project as well, but I will stop. Digital, I mean, you know, you picked up on digital, and I would say the library service is the key digital agent in the city. So we have 700 public access PCs, we have free Wi-Fi, we have now around 600 iPads to be working with community groups and communities, and hopefully eventually we'll get some of the loaning agreements going out for individuals as well. We did that as part of the Holiday Hunger programme last year. We've got a skilled staff team there and able to help, whether that's, you know, what are we calling it, basics, digital basic steps or baby steps? Basic skills. It was a good line and I can't remember it, but first steps, digital first steps, I think. So everything from, you know, how to get online to how to, you know, you picked up around, you know, getting the best deal, you know, how to use a comparing website. You know, we could hook into people's interests to hopefully then hook them into digital as well. We have a telephone helpline that a lot of people probably didn't realise. So if you need any help with your device, you can just phone the library number and somebody will call back and help you. So we've rebranded our digital programme #digital121. And we're going to be having a really big campaign about that and just wanting to get the message out that that is a space where you can access digital for free and get help. And then obviously books and reading and culture is absolutely about what we're about. And I'm not one of those librarians or heads of service that would say we're more than just books, because actually books are the main reason why people often use a library service, obviously. So that's very much at the heart of our offer. And we've got some really exciting programs of cultural activity that we're going to be looking at as well. So yeah, and of course in Armley and Bramley, we've had a beautiful refurbishment of our Armley library that I've still not seen since coming back from COVID, but that is beautiful. And Bramley, of course, was one of our new.
Brilliant, thank you. So much going on. That's amazing. Did you want to come in? Oh.
I will briefly just to say that I'm new in my position to senior librarian in West. I have worked, so I'll be covering the whole of West, all of the wards in West and all of the libraries and the communities within them. And I have a team of librarians working with me. We cover all of the communities, including those that don't have libraries or that are quite far from libraries. So we do reach out to schools and children's centres, community groups, care homes that are not close to a library. I think that's come up previously with lots of people. So that's part of our outreach. I've worked in Armley Library quite a lot before, but I am getting to know the area, other areas. Oh, sorry, I'm Kate Midwood. Kate Midwood. Thanks.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you both. Absolutely loads going on, which is fantastic. And yes, we do have the Armley library that was being transformed into a hub, and all the renovations going on, and obviously COVID hit, and Bramley library as well, which was refurbed. Absolutely fabulous. Both buildings are lovely. And well worth a visit just to have a look at the buildings, but obviously all the other services that you provide as well are in there. Do people have questions? Councillor McKenna.
Thanks, Andrea, but obviously digital is the one that we worry about, particularly in Armley. During the pandemic, we had in our area, I was a volunteer for New Wortley Community Centre delivering parcels. And there was a single parent with 4 children, and they had one iPhone, a very old-fashioned one between them, and they were actually trying to do the homework. Well, it didn't matter to the youngest because she wasn't involved, but it highlights the digital poverty that exists, not just in Armley. It happens in Bramley, and it probably happens in Kirkstall, and it certainly happens in the city. It's all very exciting, you know, but a lot of these people will actually use the library to access digital, as you know, and at the community centres like New Wortley Community and Armley Helping Hands and places in Bramley. And Wi-Fi is so expensive, you know, it is so expensive, and it's going up all the time, isn't it? And we keep changing because some aren't reliable, and we hope to move on and get a better deal. But my question, we need to consider these very carefully, because we will start to exclude areas like Armley and inner city areas. And these are the very areas that we actually want to get them into digital learning. I applaud everything you say, and I agree with everything you say. But I have to say, I do read online, but there's nothing like the feel of a book in your hand when you're reading. When I go on holidays, I pack 3 or 4 books onto my iPad, but I really like reading books. But my real question is here, obviously you're aware of everything I said, so I'm not going to labor, but my real question is, there's no substitute for face-to-face. Does this possibly mean that there'll be a cutback in opening hours in our libraries? And that's probably my big concern.
So there was a public consultation that took place about the opening hours of the library service back in the early, I think it was actually just after Christmas. We're still working through that. We're still not up to full staffing yet. So the opening hours on as they're going to be, so they're still on temporary opening hours. We lost a lot of staff during COVID. So there's been quite a big recruitment going on across both the community hubs and the library, central library as well. So there are being changes to opening hours. But I think the feedback for that should be coming out. We're hoping, I probably shouldn't put a date, but later in the autumn, we'll get the permanent opening hours and when they're going to start. But yeah, there's not a replacement for face-to-face, because we know about that loneliness and isolation, don't we? And, you know, for everybody, you can be lonely and isolated no matter what your community is, can't you? So it's just that place to be. And I know that Susan Murray, my line manager, has really made a big thing with the community hub managers about, we want to be extending a warm welcome. That's what we're focusing on at the moment, not so much the events and activities, because we've still got restrictions on meeting rooms and things, but actually anybody who comes in is warmly welcomed, and we're trying to build up the confidence in the community. But we've got lots of ideas for some of our social engagement groups, but just having in the library, we did try the chatty table, but I've got one of those parks one of those benches in a park near me, but I kind of think, I don't ever see somebody sat on that bench. should I go and try it? But I like the idea of it, the concept of, if you want to chat, sit here. But we're going to have a table and we're just going to have activities that might engage people anyway. So we've tried the jigsaws and those go really, really well. But also pictures from our Leodis. I mean, I haven't even mentioned the family history platform. We've got Leodis, but that's always generates lots of interest and conversation. So just having photographs of those of old Armley, can you identify these places? Just things like that you can actually put out that hopefully people will sort of start talking to each other, as well as having social activity groups. And yeah, that's very much what we want to do.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Andrea. I'd probably just like to take the opportunity to thank our Armley Library Hub for all their activities during COVID. They really didn't stop from doing that face-to-face interventions and to providing food parcels. They were phoning regularly to let us know that they had extra food that we could distribute. So they really were active. And also, you mentioned about the innovations. And I think I've seen that myself over the last 15 years, from my son attending Armley story time to now him being 15, and he's done the coding sessions, inspired me to do the Tech Mums course. So we've had that full circle engagement there. And I think the thing with Armley Library that is that continuous engagement from the door to everyone. And I know that people like Ali continued doing story time online during COVID, and there was lots of engagement happening. And also I have to have a bit of a brag as well on Armley's behalf, but we had the story bus at Armley Festival on Saturday, and it was just amazing. Everyone really loved it, so thank you very much for that.
The challenge for that is going to be about staffing it, but I just said to Susan Murray today, I said to Susan, we have to make it a priority that we get that bus out to festivals. So it's going to Beeston this weekend as well. But when we got our staffing up, I'm really glad it was there. Did you like it?
It was amazing, and honestly, people of all ages engaged with it, from toddlers to older people climbing into it. It was amazing. So thank you very much for making that happen.
Fantastic. I'll have to go to Beeston at the weekend and have a proper look. Yeah. Councillor Ritchie. Thank
you, Chair. Yeah, I want to start off with a thank you as well. Thanks to all the staff for the flexibility that they showed, even those when they were redeployed from the hubs. There's some comments in here about that work, and I think that's really important because that helped the city get through the pandemic. So thank you to start with. I think, again, we need to recognise that it's our administration that's invested in libraries and hubs, and I think that's a credit to us, despite the austerity that we've been in, and it's been vital that we do that. But I think the innovation and ideas and initiatives that are covered in this report probably come from the experts like yourselves, and I think that's so important, is it, for the sustainability of libraries and hubs in our city, that we're continually evolving, improving the offer and expanding the offer. The question I have is, of those people that engage with the story time, the Tech Mums, do we record postcodes to make sure that we are reaching those that are, perhaps the most deprived, the less engaged? And to add to that, do we actually work? You talked about outreach with clusters and this, that, and the other, but do we work with family support workers to encourage them to bring families to the hubs, the libraries? Because I remember as a kid, you establish habits, and we had a little routine. Our Friday night, Bramley Baths, Bramley Library, home for tea kind of thing, or it might have been tea first, and that was our family routine. We need that. We need other families now to establish those habits and routines, don't we? And that's the key to learning literacy and what have you. But perhaps they need help getting through that door, some families. So, the drug alcohol workers that work with families, family support workers, it's sort of maybe holding the hand, getting them through the door and hopefully establishing those habits. But the important thing to me is that everybody's accessing it, not just Councillor Cunningham's, who's switched on and engaged, etc., but other people that we've talked about earlier in this meeting. Thank you.
No, those are some really good points. Thank you. So in terms of the data, we do collect data, quite minimal data at the moment in Leeds, but we're going to be looking to extend that and do a lot more work about it. So we can actually, and that's the kind of information I want to come back with about the number of children aged 0 to 5 that are active members of Bramley Library, not just the holder membership card, but who have activated that card at least once in 12 months. So we can, and I think when you start to look at that, you think, well, if there's issues with literacy and you've got poor library membership, then we could that may be something we could do to address that. So all the data stuff in terms of who's engaging with us, we want to come back with, and really we're looking to really grow our own interpretation of that as well. So that's very much sort of the next few meetings. And in terms of children and literacy and working with other organisations, work very much with the children's centres now. So Amanda Ash, who heads up the children's centres, and that's very much going to be part of our work, is about how do we work with them to get groups to come to the library and accompany them. So one of the things we did, it's very loud. No, I try on a regular. Well, in Central Library, it's like we have no windows. So when an emergency vehicle goes by, it's horrendous. For our summer holiday, we worked with 13 pilot schools on 2 projects around Summer Reading Challenge and a Reception Reading Stars. And as part of that, we were really working with the schools to try and get them to motivate the children and the parents to go, but also social workers as well, so that they could be having those conversations. So I completely get that. Sometimes it's about taking the first step, isn't it? So how can we support the families to do that so that actually they see it's a nice place to go. But thank you. Yeah, sure do.
Just to add a nice little story to the summer activity and the habit forming. I was actually based, my project library was Pudsey, so it was out of your area, but Armley was another one of a school in Armley did sign up to it as well. But there were families coming in saying, and we put on the activities weekly, and the idea is it keeps the children reading over the summer, but also it forms those habits that you're talking about. And they come in the first week and they say nothing. One child, this family, didn't say anything to me. By the last week, all three family members were members of the library. They'd stopped TV before bed and they were reading before bed. They knew how to reserve books online, and they were excited to come to the library. And they said, "What are you doing in October half term? When which day's your late opening so we can come afterwards?" And that's a Pudsey story, but it's my experience. There will be families that have had the same experience in all of those project libraries, and that's how we try and establish those habits. So great point. Thanks.
Oh, we've got a car going past now, sort of emergency vehicle going past now as well. We're competing with all sorts tonight. Would anyone else like to come in? Councillor Venner.
This is quite a specific question and not linked to our community committee area. So I'm doing a piece of work on behalf of the Cabinet of the Council around the Gypsy and Traveller community, because it crosses all our portfolios. So it technically sits under Councillor Mohammed Rafiq, but I asked if I could take it forward. So we've just re-established the Gypsy and Traveller kind of strategy group that's existed before. But within the children and families Gypsy and Traveller team, that they're going out on a bus to roadside families. And we're looking at actually having a mobile children's centre that will go out to the sites, but also we've got a lot of families that are on the roadside. One of our really big priorities is education of traveller children, because it's not really that the families don't want children to go to school, but they usually end up pulling them out after primary school because of the racism and discrimination experience. I just wondered if you were linked into that work at all.
Yeah, actually, I've just been talking with Helen Binns. So and yesterday I was talking with the 2 members of the library service who are aligned with the story bus. So we're going to be sort of working with Helen to as part of our taster, when we get the story bus going out, take the bus there to some of the sites as well, and work with Helen so that she can support our staff as well. But what we were saying is we think that the story bus going, it's not going to be like the council's coming. It's going to be something that's, so vibrant, and yeah, so we're going to be picking up on that piece of work as well, which is quite interesting. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, we've had a few really good conversations about how that could look. I'm just thinking about whether the what's the mobile children's centre? Maybe they should take that out on the story bus as well. Yeah, would be more fun.
Fantastic, thank you. Any more? Oh, yeah, Catherine.
Just quickly, when we were talking about sort of people not being able to access, being able to do the surveys and all that kind of thing, would it not be a good time to be able to promote people going into the libraries? I'm just thinking in Armley Park, there's hopefully going to be some engagement going on. Could people be encouraged to access surveys, engagement through the library? They could, you know, it could be a designated board that's in the library that's like, right, we're talking about the tennis courts in Armley, come and have your say. It could be that you could capture it on paper. It could be that they just talk to somebody about it, or they could log on to a computer. It might be the first time they log on, or I don't know, maybe libraries are doing everything, I get, and they're brilliant, but I'm thinking that might be a good way to encourage people into the library and feel part of the community and maybe pick up a book at the same time.
Absolutely. I've got a real thing about libraries as democratic spaces, and actually places where I was talking to Mike actually from the policy team. I've got an article about this. I said I'd share him, but you know, that place where we can engage with citizens. So I think if there's anything like that, ideas you've got about would actually drive people to the library, either to, there's a survey that they need to complete. We could have it out, like you say, we could have it on the desktop of the computers. But if people wanted to have set up local talks about things like that, the space is there to use.
Yeah, you could have it that the Armley Park will be there for the day, discussing this issue.
At a table.
Here's your time to come and talk to people, and like if we're not there on the day when you're there, there's the information.
Yeah, just using that space to come and have a pop-up. Very happy for that, aren't we?
Great idea, thank you. Brilliant, sounds really good. Yeah. Brilliant.
Horrifyingly, one of my first jobs when I was a community librarian, we used to love it when we carpeted over a parquet floor. Can you believe that, in the 80s? And now we're spending all our time ripping those up and revealing that beautiful, you know, those beautiful floors. Yeah, I can't wait to go and see it. Yeah, it'd be lovely.
I missed the room where they have the history room.
Yeah.
We used to have surgeries in there. When nobody come in, I used to read all the history.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's going to be lovely. Look forward to seeing that. Okay.
Brilliant. No, the Bramley Hub Library is the same, with all the old radiators and the tiling, and when all the shelves came off the walls and all the tiling was revealed and everything is absolutely amazing. So
I think the quality of the refurbishment of the hubs and libraries has been absolutely staggering. And again, it's that how it connects people with the sense of place. So I've got another whole talk about libraries and the placemaking agenda, but
brilliant. Well, thank you for coming. It's been brilliant to hear everything that's going on. And as Councillor Ritchie said, and we discussed in the briefing, you know, huge thanks to the staff. I know I spoke to some of them last summer as you briefly opened up and then had to close again, about all the different things they've been doing, you know, throughout the pandemic, the phone line, you know, the helplines, everything that they've done. So yeah, amazing work that they did. during the pandemic. It was brilliant. And yeah, good luck with everything that's going on. And I think definitely we want to, in the spring, come back again and let us know what's going on and give us updates on how the library service is going, all the digital access and everything.
I think that was one of the things, sorry, that's come out of a lot of the committees. How do we keep you all updated about what's happening? And we've been talking to Carl about how we can do that, but you know, going through the chair and going through the officers to keep you updated about what's happening locally. And then, as I say, come back and Kate will be able to give a much more detailed update at those meetings.
Fantastic. Okay. And we can contact yourself, Kate, as the senior librarian for the West. Yeah, brilliant, fantastic.
We might take the offer of talking to them.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Brilliant. And we'll be in touch and look forward to you coming back again. Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, so we need to move on now to agenda item 11, which is the finance report. So you do have the papers in your main pack, and obviously we have the supplementary as well that's been circulated today. So I'll hand over to Karen, who's going to present the finance report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, the final. Oh, I feel like I'm really loud. Am I? I can hear it back on myself. Sorry. On page 45. So this report. Sit back. Oh, sorry. This report provides the Community Committee with an update on the budget position for the Wellbeing Fund, Youth Activity Fund, Capital Budget, as well as the Community Infrastructure Levy Budget for 2021-22. So if we can start on paragraph 18, members are asked to note a remaining wellbeing budget of £127,110.71. And below that, table 1 provides a breakdown of all projects approved so far from this financial year. And at the bottom of the table, it will show the remaining balances for each ward. So Armley currently has £57,108.07 remaining. Bramley and Stanley have £44,634.96 and Kirkstall has £25,367.68 remaining in the wellbeing budget. Moving on to paragraph 20, members are now asked to consider funding applications that have been received, and I have sent project summaries out to all members prior to the meeting. So the first application to consider is for the Armley and Bramley and Stanley wards for their festive light motifs from Leeds Lights for a total of £5,176 split between the wards. So Armley would be £2,275 for the 10 motifs and 1 member of staff for the switch on if it was to be on a weekend. And then Bramley and Stanley would be £2,901. And I have at the moment included the tree and the lights for the tree, just until we know kind of what's happening with a switch on event, and we can amend it later if need be. But I thought best to include it for now, because we can take it off rather than add it on later. It's probably easier to do it that way. So that's that first one. Sorry, rambling. Is that okay? Yeah.
Okay, everyone in
Thank
agreement? You. Yeah, we're okay with that. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'll hand back over to Karen for paragraph 21.
Yep. So yeah, moving on to paragraph 21. This is a project for the Dazzle Dance project for the Bramley and Stanley and Kirkstall wards from their YAF budget. The project is 1,980 in total, split between the 2 wards. Bramley and Stanley 1,350 and Kirkstall £630.
Okay, is everybody okay with that? Particularly Bramley, Stanley and Kirkstall councillors, yeah, but we're all in agreement. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Paragraph 22 is asking the Bramley and Stanley members to consider an application from the Bramley Trinity Methodist Church for their enrichment project to help isolated members of the local community at a cost of £3,000.
done. Yeah.
Thanks. So we've spoken to the Reverend, the Minister about this, and we were supposed to have a briefing from Grace Stead, who's mentioned in the report that she couldn't make the event that we were going to be spoken to. So I am in support of it, but just in the application form, there were just a couple of things which seem to have religious connotations, which we wouldn't fund, would we? But I'm confident, really, that it's going to be open to all.
Yeah.
But it's just reiterating that aspect that it has to be.
Yeah.
Bramley Elderly Action are involved, of course, so I'm sure it will be.
Yeah.
But it's just that caveat I'd add. But I will support. I don't know if Councillor Gruen's commented on it at all to you.
Just to let you know, Councillor Gruen did call me earlier. She said she's in support of it. The only thing she said she would have raised is she just feels some of the costs going to Grace for the project are perhaps a little high, but she said overall she is happy with it and she is happy to approve it. But maybe just something to discuss in future with that. But yeah, I can make sure that's made clear on the, well, I can have a discussion with them. The application did, I think, read mostly that it was definitely open to all, but I can make it clear on the funding agreement. Yep. Thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure we'll be keeping in touch with the group as well. So we can, that's great. Thank you.
Can I just clarify, is that actually approved?
Yeah.
Thank
Everyone
you.
everyone happy with that. Yeah. We'll pick up the others after the comments afterwards. Yeah.
So the next one is the supplementary information that was sent out separately. That was sent out today. And this is for the Armley ward from Leeds Community Homes for their community landscape project at a cost of £3,067.50.
Can I declare not a pecuniary interest, but an interest that I am on the board for Leeds Community Homes?
Right.
Okay. Councillor McKenna, are you?
Just quickly.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. No problem.
We're coming late. I'm happy with that, Chair.
So, Councillor McKenna, you're happy with that?
Yeah, I also approve it on the principle that their previous engagements for the project have been really good, and I think that there'll be a lot of interest in engaging in the area.
And the landscape scheme will benefit everybody who lives in the area. It's not just 34 houses, but as you say, we've had consultations. Actually very good.
Yeah, I read it this afternoon. It looks really interesting. Yeah, definitely. Everyone happy with that on the committee of councillors? Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So moving on to paragraph 23, members are asked to note the list of all the projects that have been approved by a delegated decision since the last meeting on the 20th of July. Paragraphs 27 and 28 is some monitoring information that we received from the Kirkstall Mini Festival that we've shared for members to note. Moving on to paragraph 31, members are asked to note there is a remaining youth activity fund budget of £37,059.44, and table 2 provides a detailed update of all the projects that have been approved from this budget so far. And again, at the bottom of the table is a budget remaining per ward. Armley has £14,624.02. Bramley and Stanley have £15,487.96, and Kirkstall has £6,947.46. Paragraph 32 shows a remaining budget in the small grants and skips pot of £3,508.56, and the tables below, table 3 and 4, show all the projects and skips that have been funded from this budget for this financial year. Paragraph 33 shows a remaining capital budget of £25,108.84, and paragraph 44, members are asked no, sorry, 34. Members are asked to note the remaining still budget of £82,153.84. And again, table 4 provides details of the projects approved from that budget so far this year. And that's all from this report. Thank you, members.
Didn't I apply for the allotments from Standing Road? Is that not come?
For the skips,
yeah.
it's not come through as yet.
What is that? I mean,
I
there was
think
some
he
issue with
was,
asbestos.
yeah, he was waiting on that, I think. Yeah, he did say he would get one into me, but as yet, no, he's not sent it through. I had a conversation with him.
We've done 2 days in Kirkstall Ward with skips, one in April, which was the first one in the city. So that's not that's on the field.
What's this for the skip? Sorry, is it not on there?
And then we did one more recently on the Old Farm Estate.
Yeah, so I think the Leeds City Council housing team is the 2 that were done in April. Oh no, that's the September ones, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll have to look into that. I apologise. Hang on. Let me just remind myself. I think what happened with the ones in April is they were from another budget.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they were the ones that we were having trouble sourcing, weren't they, in the end? And we ended up going to Ed Walton, somebody who deals with AWM. It's a whole story, but yeah, it's been paid from a different budget, which is why they're not on there.
Yeah, I'm going to bring Councillor Richard, but can I just remind members to put your microphone on so it picks up? Sorry, okay. Thank you.
I need to.
Yeah, just on this sill, 82,000.
Yeah.
Is that with that? We've got some sort of allocated for a traffic calming scheme. Is that with that out, or has that come back in? Because
That's with that off at the
Taken off.
moment. I'm
Yeah,
still
yeah.
waiting to find out whether that's going to be used towards it or not.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's with it out at the moment.
But you see the problem, particularly co-op teas, we've had an injection of 16,000. It's nothing, isn't it? The parks need 250, 300,000 injecting to bring them up to standard. So it's challenging for us. We're at that level where you can't really make a huge difference with that money.
Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, driving through the wards, I noticed that Cooksall and Bramley, good for them, have SID signs up. We've got none in Armley whatsoever, and it's something Councillor Cunningham and Alice and I have discussed. And I noticed we have 25,000 in capital. So could we make a bid for 2 or 3 from that pot, please? It does seem wrong. I mean, we have schemes where we wanted to see them. SIDs are the flashing lights that tell you your speed. It's called SID, SID, I forget what it stands for. So if it's you're in a 20 miles on and you're doing 25, it'll warn you that you're over. One of the big issues we've had, Karen, as you know, on Armley Forum has been speeding in Armley. So can council submit a bid for that? Just to catch up to Bramley and Kirkstall.
I can catch up with you afterwards about the meeting. Yeah, through highways, we can put in, highways would apply for the funding and we do it through highways, but yeah, we can discuss that. Yeah.
For cats and because they are movable. When you put them in, you can move them somewhere else. So they're not final fixtures in any way, shape or form. There might be one worth thinking about, but one standing in the road. You know, I don't know. Do they put them on 40 miles hours, Kevin? No.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, because they're just the speed indicator devices is the acronym, what the acronym stands for, and yeah, I mean they're non-enforceable. They're only advisory, so it's just sort of monitoring.
We did.
Yeah, Councillor McKenna, there is actually one on Stanningley Road. It's just at the side of the football pitch on Gotts Park as you're coming into Leeds. Yeah, there is a SID there.
Yeah, we did in Bramley. We purchased we purchased SIDS with the I think we got 6 of the what's the word I'm looking for, brackets to put them on so that we could move them to, and we can move them around the ward. So yeah, you can do that. We can move them around, and they can be set at the different, whatever the speed limit is, they can be set for the speed limit that's applicable for where you're moving them to at the time. Yeah.
Talk to Karen on highways then. Thank you.
So if you can pick up that with Councillor McKenna. Yeah, thank you. And Councillor Cunningham as well. And I'm sure Catherine will want to come in as well on that. Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me ignorance, what's community infrastructure levy, and what sort of things? I mean, that's not an awful lot of money, but it's a good 82,000. What does that get allocated to?
I'm not sure what it all means. It's just that we wouldn't normally ask co-opted members to discuss the financial report, but I'm sure Karen will be able to tell you what the SIL means and what it all stands for.
Okay, Jim, if you with your planning chair hat on, I was going to come in, but with your planning, yeah, you want to come in.
SIL stands for Community Infrastructure Levy, and it's payable on a planning application to get permission to do what they want to do. They have to, it's a government thing, it's compulsory. They have to pay a certain amount to improve the environment around and mitigate. No, it's not 106, it's totally different from 106. And the other thing about SIL is it's payable on commencement of the scheme when they put the first bricks down, where 106 is only payable when the scheme is built out. Most of the money that's involved in it goes to the centre, the executive board, but they have allowed 20% to go to local areas. So if you had a neighbourhood planning forum, they would get 15%. As a community committee, we are responsible for administering that, and I think 5% of that 20% goes on administration. I don't know why it's so expensive, but there is. But the majority is spent at the centre from the executive board. At the moment, it's probably eaten up by replacement schools, you know, because you have houses and there's shorter schools, and they build new schools or they extend schools. But it should be on the government rules related to the planning application. I think that's the first thing to say. But in planning terms, Kevin and I, as planning chairs, try to keep that as broad as we possibly can so that we have some flexibility. But it's capital, you know, it's a one-off, you spend it and it's gone. Yeah. But it is quite a bit of money, you're right. And we could use it. And it's one of the things that we do pull from the 3 wards. We don't say split it 3 ways. We pay out where it's most needed.
I know Liz just wants to come in briefly, then I'm just conscious of time and we'll move on to the final report then. Okay.
Yeah, just to clarify, Councillor McKenna's absolutely right in what he says. Just to clarify, the community committee gets allocated 15% of the SIL receipt. 25%, it could be 25% if there's a locally agreed a neighbourhood plan that has to go out to a referendum locally, but on that basis you can draw the greater amount. But Councillor McKenna's quite right, 85% or thereabouts of the funding goes into a central pot, which at the moment the executive board have allocated to support the increase in school provision, school places and the like. Yeah.
Thank you, Liz. And we're going to move on to report. I'm just conscious of time, so we're going to move on to item 12, which is the last report we've got. So Karen, over to you to present that one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is the area update report. This report brings to members' attention an update of the work which the communities team and other services are engaged in based on the priorities identified by the community committee. And for this particular meeting and the last one as well, we also use this report to make nominations to the Inner West subgroups and community forums. So on that note, if we can please start on paragraph 4, members are now asked to make a nomination for the role of Chair of Armley Forum. This was deferred at the last meeting because Councillor McKenna had sent his apologies. So if we can now make that decision, please, if possible. Are we?
Everyone? Okay, you're happy to continue that, Councillor McKenna. Everyone else in favour of that? Yeah. Okay, thank you, everybody.
And then, yeah, I will assume the rest of the report is read unless members have any comments or questions.
Any comments or questions, Councillor Richard?
Yeah, sorry to prolong the meeting if people want to get off, but I do think it's important, firstly, to recognise the improved community safety report.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And Scott did give me a ring. But just on that, I just want to highlight a couple of things from last meeting. I talked about looking at getting some throw lines for the locks. Well, Canal and River Trust have assured me that they're going to do a health and safety review of all the locks with a look to putting in those throw lines as well. We may need to help fund that, but I think it's an important thing. This is for people who are swimming in the locks from a harm reduction, because I don't think we're ever going to stop it, but harm reduction initiative. And the other thing, it touches on the speeding monitoring by the PC readings mentioned, and I have pressed the inspector for some more regular updates about the work they're doing along that, because 3rd of July is too long, and the deployment of the SID machine, again, it's not recent enough. So I've asked, and again, I suggest through your tasking groups that you press your officers to do the same, because I keep reading about initiatives in Otley and all these outer areas, and it's so important, as Councillor McKenna's pointed out earlier, so to our residents, that there's a presence on our estates, 20 minutes a session, whatever, but out there, and then people might change, you know, instill behaviour change from drivers. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Richard. Anybody else? Councillor McKenna.
Just a very quick one, Chair. You will recall in council yesterday when we had discussion about community committees, and I totally disagree with what some councillors say, not from our side, we sit on our benches, but one thing they did say that struck a chord really was that police officers weren't coming along to community committee. And I look around and we haven't got a police officer, and we often talk about community safety and ASB. So Karen, could we make sure that we have some police officer there? They do come to Armley, they do have packed meetings, and I'm sure they do the same in Bramley, but this is an important forum really, and they should be here.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have a chat about that for the next agenda, Karen. I know they do come to Bramley Forum and other, you know, events, so and give a useful update on Bramley to attendees there. So we'll ask them to come along and do a similar sort of update for us at the next community committee. Yeah, definitely. Everyone happy with that? Everyone in agreement with that? Yeah, do an inner west wide. Any further questions or comments on the update report? No? Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Karen, for pulling that together along with the financial report. Thank you very much. I know it's quite a long task to pull all that together, so thank you. Okay, we're now on to any other business on the agenda. Do members of the committee have any other business that they want to raise? Councillor Cunningham, I see your hand.
Thank you. Just a question really. At the moment, New Wortley have got a really exciting new billboard project, and we've got agreement with one of the channels for one of the billboard posters to be displayed. And I just wonder what arrangements we can make for our own council billboards around Armley to perhaps display them, and how we'd go about those arrangements. Thank you.
I'll have a look into that and get back to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Brilliant. Councillor Ritchie.
Yeah, just for future meetings, can we move back to our community venues for future meetings now that we're back meeting in person, please? Thank you.
Yeah, just to say that with that, the reason that we've been having them here is the webcasting element is difficult in the local, well, it's not possible at the moment in the local communities. So if you want in the webcasting element, it does need to be here for now. So it's kind of either or at the moment is why it's here. So that would be a,
yeah.
Just because we can't have the public in the meeting.
that was the initial reason for it. But I do believe we're just carrying on with the webcasting if committees are wanting that element so the public can watch from home if they decide to.
Yeah, I mean,
is why we're webcasting.
Yeah, we talked about accessible meetings and people being able to, you know, attend from home. And here is the only way we can do that, isn't it? So I mean, I'm happy for us to have that discussion as a committee and decide how we want to go ahead with it. Definitely, you know, how we want to have, where we want to have the next meeting and how we want to proceed with that. If people have opinions on whether we should move back into the inner west.
I think we should. I think that's more important than webcasting.
There must be venues. Sorry. Three venues that we could use. I mean, Armley Library springs to mind, probably Bramley Library would okay as well. Not sure about Kirksall, but I'm sure you know venues that we could use.
Yeah, it's not having venues to use, that's the issue as such. It's the webcasting and the technology. I don't begin to understand the technology behind it, but the technology isn't transferable or so it's not so much finding a venue.
I know it's not an issue about venues, but I think a lot of the venues that I'm mentioned, Armley Library, should be capable of webcasting. They'll have good Wi-Fi, and so are Bramley Library and perhaps some other places in Kirksall.
Okay, can I suggest that Karen has a look into that and looks into like the Leeds Council buildings such as the hubs and libraries, and looks into whether there is a facility or a way to do that. Yes, sorry.
Can I just say that I think if the community committees are moving out to the locality venues, there would be no webcasting, because it's very difficult for us to actually do the webcasting in any of the localities using Zoom, etc. So if you are wanting it webcast, it would need to be in the city centre. There are other community committees that have used the localities and they're not having any of the webcasting now. It is just a public meeting and anybody in the local area can attend.
Sorry, Jim, did you say you prefer being in the locality than having the webcast?
No, if the choice is that if we want a webcast, it has to be here, or locality, no webcast. I think I'd prefer to be here and have a webcast.
Catherine.
Are you able to know how many people actually are viewing it? Like, you know, is there one person viewing it online? Is there 50 online, and is there an average per meeting? Because surely that would just make a deciding point.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question as well.
I mean, that is something we probably do need to look at. I think at the time there's not necessarily many people watching us live, but I do think we get quite a few hits afterwards, but without totally looking into it, I can't answer the average now, but yeah, it's worth looking at, I guess. Yeah.
I don't know what the average is, but we can tell how many people are accessing it. I remember when I was on the Leeds and Bradford, and we had 832 people, and they were able to tell us to the single digits. They kept changing, but it was in the region of 800. So that technology is available. Whether there's a lot watching community committees or just a handful, I don't know. But if it could be important to those group, even if it was a 5 or 10, you know, we shouldn't really exclude them, should we?
Do we have any other views around the table, Councillor Venn, about moving back into the?
I just support looking at the evidence really in terms of how many people used to attend in person when we were in the venues compared to how many people watch it on the webcast. I think that'll help us make the decision about how we're getting the most public engagement.
Councillor Ritchie.
Yeah, I agree with that. But are the other formats? There's Facebook Live, isn't there? And, you know, getting it out there for people to watch. It doesn't have to be the formal webcast. I agree with improving accessibility, but I also think we should be out in the community committees, but they should be based in the communities, how we've rotated them. And if people need help getting to meetings, we need to look at that. Can we help them?
I think I would like to ask you, Karen, to look in, and Debbie as well, to look into a way. Can we find a way to do that so that we can move back into the inner west, to give people that option who may not be able to get to the city centre as well to get to the meeting, but also is there another way that we can do it? Can we have a look into that and just see if there's any possibilities like Zoom or anything that we can do that on? If we're going to explore all possibilities, yeah.
But I mean, I'll have a conversation.
Yeah.
In terms of the webcast, I don't know how possible it is. Well, I don't think it's possible. I'm just going to be honest. I don't know. Are we looking into it? I don't know what else to say.
I think we need to take it away. I know there's lots of discussion going on about the infrastructure, our IT infrastructure moving forward, but there's no quick wins around that at this moment in time, as far as I'm aware. As for some of the complications is because the live feed is fed over the council's YouTube channel, which has to sit on the council's network. So Councillor Ritchie's suggestion about using other types of platforms, it may be something we can do, but it won't sit on the current channel that it's being viewed on. But we can maybe look at what those options are. And I think the point's made already around looking at the evidence base in terms of presence at the meetings prior to COVID, and what the reach has been in terms of people watching the feeds, both at the time that the live broadcast and afterwards, because I think it's quite right. Some of the committees have had hundreds of views of the meetings, but they largely happen when people have got on from work the following day, when they've got a bit of time and things like that. But we can certainly look at it. Yeah.
Now, because I'm just conscious that we've only got 3 of our CoOp Teams here tonight. So, you know, is that, you know, by moving back to the inner west, we're going to get more of our CoOp Teams to attend as well. So we have to think of all those, you know, all those issues as well, don't we? And look at that evidence. So if we can gather that evidence together, you know, and if the issue is, you know, some of our CoOp Teams haven't been able to attend because it's in the city centre, then again, that's something in the evidence that we need to look at, and we need to make a decision on how we go forward. And yeah. Okay, so we'll email out with those findings, and then we can make a decision on where we go from there. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah, sorry, Liz, you want to come in?
I was just going to add actually that we had a discussion at the chairs meeting a week or so ago about some consultations that'll be coming out through the chairs to all of the members about how we conduct meetings in the future. So there's an opportunity there for you to feed in some views, because if we need to look at how we do things differently, and there's a consensus across the committees that that's what they really want to do, then that's a good evidence base for us to put a case together around that.
Just to say, we've got 3 people watching at the moment.
And I think 1 or 2 of those may well be officers checking in just to make sure that we are still webcasting.
I was trying to look back on the previous ones, but I don't click on anything, so I didn't know if it were going to start playing. So I'll send it through.
Okay, so we'll have a look at all that evidence. How many people are watching? Is it the fact that the CoOp Teams aren't coming because we're in the civic hall, not in the community, and look at all that evidence, and then we can make a decision going forward on what we do on that. Okay, thank you, everybody. Any other business? No, we're all happy with that. So the next meeting then, talking of the meetings, is going to be on Wednesday the 17th of November at 6 p.m. And again, we'll leave the venue to be decided based on what we come back with the evidence, and maybe we can make a decision on that and how we go forward for that meeting in November. Yeah. Thank you for attending, everybody, and thank you to officers for helping pull the meeting together and run the meeting tonight. And have a safe journey.